Welcome back to Across the Table. My name is Kyle. I am still quarantined here the week before my birthday, my 27th birthday, which I'm not too happy about. So once again, I'm not actually joined today by Dylan, but I am joined by another member of my family, who is the matriarch, I believe is the right term for that. The mother of myself, Anna, and our oldest brother, Michael. She has been teaching for 32 years. She is deeply involved in the local school district science education as a STEAM lead. And she has had multiple student teachers over the years who are all starting or in their career as teachers. So would you hi, Mom. How you doing?
Hey, Kyle.
I just want to, build for the audience some of that ethos, just some of who you are. I had a list of many, many things I wanted to title you with, and you actually asked me to cut it down, which is really humble and cool. But would you just, who are you? What are you about? What's your story? Just share a little bit about who you are.
Well, I knew I wanted to be a teacher from the time I was 5 years old, and I've been teaching in elementary school now for 32 years, and I've learned a lot over the years from all of three of my own children, as well as hundreds and hundreds of elementary school children. I started out in kindergarten, and after 26 years of kindergarten and first grade, I moved to fourth grade, which has been a fun adventure.
26, really? Oh, wow, that's incredible. Okay. So you were telling me, and I've been witness to you as you've been working on in the classroom and for the district, STEAM. Some of our, some people listen to this, and me, myself, I don't necessarily know everything that there is to know about STEAM. What does it mean to be a STEAM lead? Like, what does all that look like? What is STEAM?
Well, most people have heard of STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And then STEAM is STEM with the addition of art. And I always think in any of those other areas, you can always put in something creative and include art in your science, technology, engineering, and math adventures. And I've been really involved for most of my years teaching and developing hands-on science and implementing programs, testing programs, and just making sure kids have opportunities to get involved and learn through investigation, because that's really how kids will learn best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously I can speak to that from my own personal experience, right? Because I don't do well in the classroom setting. I don't do well in the office setting, as also you have discovered for yourself in recent days, weeks, a little bit of both. I know as an educator, especially now during this whole coronavirus, everything, epidemic, pandemic, what do you want to call it? Quarantine, whatever. There are a lot of things up in the air for a lot of people. A lot of people with work, myself included. A lot of people with travel, with family, all those complications. As an educator, as a teacher, and as someone who's I've personally seen, be such an impact and such a great teacher for years and years and years, and a ton of students. What's something that maybe you feel like is the biggest surprise or struggle for not only yourself, but just teachers in general in your sphere over the last number of weeks?
Well, most of us who are teaching do it because we like being with kids. And I really miss the kids. I miss interacting with them in person and just being concerned for their education, but also just what they're thinking and who they're with and if they have what they need. It's harder to connect with them when you don't get to look at them.
Yeah. What is I know it's harder to connect, especially obviously with your students when they're not there in front of you and you're not able to just, kind of be in the same room as them. Now as the district has kind of led you guys from doing a lot of things from home, where have the challenges been for that? I mean, just structurally, the logistics of that. Do you feel like you guys were overall prepared for any kind of situation like we have now? And if so, what helped you, believe that? And if not, where do you think we could have done better in one or two areas?
Well, we definitely weren't prepared for this. It came on quickly. At the time that we knew things were building and the potential was there, we started to make some plans, but to get all students logged into a device and provided with a device if they don't have one, so that everybody can access a distance learning platform, that's a big challenge. It's also been really empowering for me and many of my colleagues, as we've realized, boy, as teachers, we are still learning. We're on a really steep learning curve right now. And I don't like the reason, but it's exciting to be an adult learner and to realize we can figure things out and solve problems and do the best we can for our kids. And it will definitely change shape over the next couple of weeks and possibly months if this continues. But that initial day of realizing these kids weren't coming back the next week, and we had a few hours during that final Friday the 13th to pack up things that they could use from home and just prepare them that we just found out we are not coming back together next week, and we're going to do everything we can so that we can continue our learning and make sure everybody had their password so they could log into Google Classroom and just get the logistical things as much as we could in order on that day. And then teachers were expecting to come back and work on Monday. And then the changes went into place over that weekend where even the teachers were not gathering together at the school.
That's right. I remember because we were on the way to the Celebration of Life. And that's when you got the information and you shared it with the rest of us in the car that Contra Costa was, and that meant for your school district as well, going into shelter in place. And I remember us getting back home, and I had to run off and do something. I don't exactly remember exactly what it was, but I had to run off and do something. And then you, as a teacher, you had to go in, and you had until midnight. And we got back at like 5:30, and you had until midnight to get to school, to get everything you need out of your classroom, to get out of there, and to get back home 2 towns over. So, that's been a challenge. I think there's a misconception, and I think it can be somewhat accurate, but I think it's inaccurate most of the time. There's this misconception, especially with a lot of people I talk to or have talked to in the past. Short little conversations, but they think that a teacher's job is 9 to 5. They think it's one of those just you work at school maybe like an hour before / after as you're cleaning up or whatever for the kids. And I've seen you pour in hours and hours and stay up until 11 o'clock at night, just working midnight, sometimes even later, and then getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And when we were younger, wrangling all 3 of the kids up, getting us out the door. And as kids, we were no joke either. I mean, between my, at the time, diagnosed bipolar, ADHD, diabetes, my sister just being a cuckoo clock, and then obviously all the challenges we also had with Michael, and that's just not because of him, but also because of our dynamic between me and him. I saw you in this superhero light. I didn't know it at the time, and it took me a lot of years to look back and to really recognize. I've been around a lot of people who are considered great leaders, great people who are professionals in the field, people who are very outspoken and can stand up in front of a crowd and give huge lectures. But that being said, I don't think anyone quite takes the cake like you. As a leader, and as someone who I have obviously see as a leader, and someone who has influence, and someone who has led many people, whether it be kids, teachers, student teachers, people in the church, on mission trips, all these things. What do you think is the biggest lesson you've taken away from or that you're learning currently in this whole situation?
That we are always learning, or we should be always learning. And even in the stressful times, it's kind of exciting learning new things and figuring new things out, and staying up late to try some new app or watch something that I think is going to work well for the kids. So I wish we didn't have this reason for doing it, but it really is, it's exciting to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah. Now I know that, as a parent in all this too, now your kids are grown kind of, but as someone who, you've been through quite a lot of things with your kids, both domestically and internationally, we've gotten to travel the globe. What do you imagine is the maybe 2 or 3 most stressful things or unsure things, for some of the parents out there, parents of, elementary school kids, obviously, but maybe even the junior hires and the high schoolers as well?
Well, locally, I think parents who are still having to work, especially people that are still working, in hospitals, frontline, or our first responders, or even the people in the grocery store. I was at the store for a quick stop this morning, and they're slammed.
Yeah.
And
I still haven't been able to go buy more toilet paper. Luckily, we were stocked up before this, but.
And, I think if they also have kids at home, that, that's just really stressful, not knowing what your kids are doing. And then when you do see them, you now have become
a potential
teacher.
Yeah.
And you now have to work with your kid, if they need, help. And most of the kids do, to be able to do what they're supposed to do. So, locally, I think that's a real challenge. The things I see happening globally, I mean, we have so much firsthand experience with Tijuana and, the kids that we know that are living in the dump at Tijuana and that have been dependent on, donations and people who come and help and bring things and provide food, and think, they're living in a mess right now. I mean, they already had such difficult situations, but now they're not having the volunteers coming and helping provide for them. So it's just scary, and thinking around the world. I mean, this is inconvenient for us, but we have an income, we have food, we have a roof over our head, and we have the ability to shelter in place. Yeah. So it's a scary situation for a lot of people. And
with a lot of people, going out of their way and panic buying or buying in bulk or whatever you want to call it too. It's one of those things that you're right. I mean, we overall, for the most part, we are fortunate as a family. Two of your sons don't live at home, but the fact that we do overall have the resources, we have the ability. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of annoyance, in terms of dealing with a lot of things, but it's not a life or death situation for us. So we're fortunate enough for that. And many people in our area are fortunate enough for that, but a lot of other people aren't. And, it's super, I think the most unsettling thing. And even though, I think we always, comment, you and I particularly, and then a lot of people, about how we don't have enough time. And now that we do have time, it's because it's in such uncertain circumstances that it still is just so exhausting. For you, worrying about all your kids, not just the kids you have now too. I'm sure you're thinking about, how this will affect, next year, how this will affect the end of this year, how this is affecting, maybe some of your old student teachers or students of the past, who still go to that school. So, there are a lot of things that are definitely just concerns to have. What do you think? Well, actually, even before that, as someone who's, I think you've been selected most years, directly or indirectly, to be the teacher and facilitate, maybe, I don't know the right word for this. I'm just gonna say challenging, some challenging individuals as students, and I think we, partially that goes at you as a teacher and your skill and your ability. I think part of it is also, you have a diabetic son and ADHD and bipolar and autism, and all these things that you are, the mother of. So I think that's part of the reason those play into that too. In your experience, in that regard, how has being a parent of those things, maybe in some ways obviously, but maybe in other ways not so obviously, help prepare you for being able to lead and to teach and to care for kids with those challenging circumstances, or maybe not exactly those challenging circumstances? How is some of the, I guess you could say, hardships of our family, or some things we've had to deal with, how has that prepared you, and how has that helped you to love and to lead these kids?
Wow. That's a lot of questions.
I know, I'm sorry.
So yeah, for sure, my own family has given me lots of experience in this area, and I definitely have had lots of challenging students over the years, both medically and behaviorally. And I think one of the best things that both experience in the classroom and at home has brought to my teaching now is I'm not really afraid of those things. You might see a challenge, but you can kind of see the person behind it. Or, you mentioned, you being diabetic. And when I would have diabetic kids, it's like the idea that they're diabetic and that they would check their blood sugar in class is like, no big deal. That's their life. That's what they need to do. There wasn't that fear that a lot of teachers had. Oh, they have to have the nurse there. It has to be very official. And I strongly believe that God gave me the children and the experiences with students that I've had so that I can continue to go on and serve and be there for other kids.
And I know those are some fun experiences both in the house and at school that you've shared with me. Some very unique ones that we won't get too much into right here.
One right now that's
okay.
Not mentioning names, but it's been really kind of funny moving from a classroom experience to an online experience, and having a number of kids who are very active and blurred and require some structure, but also lots of opportunity to move. So in the classroom, I can schedule movement breaks and then have a more realistic expectation of taking turns. And when we have started having these Zoom meetings, it is a real challenge managing those same kids that blurt all day in class. They monopolize all the conversations in Zoom, and they answer all the questions in Google Classroom over and over. They're the first one to make the comment, or hey, what's up? And so it's just kind of funny seeing their personalities continue in a new format.
Do you think that Google or Zoom and Google Classroom, especially with, and this is just kind of off topic, but do you think it is in a way somewhat preparing these kids for the future, when we know, especially now, that when you're in the business setting, when you're in those, when it's like that's what you're using to communicate a lot of the times. Do you think it's helping to prepare them, or do you think I personally obviously think it does, but I am a different branch on this. So
well, and that's certainly an optimistic take on our current experience. We wouldn't have chosen it for that reason,
right?
But there is a big focus on school to careers. And earlier this year, I had the opportunity to spend the day at Marathon Refinery and just kind of see what careers are available locally and get an idea of, what they're looking for as far as what skills our students can build today that will help them in the future. So certainly being able to follow proper etiquette in a Zoom meeting is going to be something that they're going to be able to use in their future. So I think when this is all over, we will be able to look back and see some of the positives that have come out of it. Yeah.
Do you think for end of the year, do you see any end of the year challenges? Now, obviously, I've been through the schooling system as a student. So it's like not being able to walk at a graduation, or partake in a senior trip or something. That's a incredible bummer. And I feel really, really sad. And, it's unfortunate for some of those students. But for you in your realm, do you think you foresee any of those challenges on your side administratively as a teacher? What are some of those challenges that maybe some of the teachers, I wouldn't say can look forward to, but educators might have to be reminded that could possibly be a thing coming up?
Well, I think it's only real. We have to be realistic and that is a possibility. I'm still hoping that we will get back before the end of school. Maybe not until May, but I want to see my kids again. I want to have that in-person experience with them. And as the plan changes, we'll have to change what we're doing and how we're teaching. And because if we do everything remotely from the end of the year, there are going to be things that they have to learn and that we have to assess and evaluate before the end of the year. The good thing is that state testing has been called off. So if we do get back to school and actually see the kids in person, we don't have to spend a couple of weeks on testing.
I always liked testing, except for the English part when we had to write. Like, I enjoyed it, but that's probably because we got candy when we did it.
Yeah. I always pass out Jolly Ranchers, so there definitely are a number of students who
good incentive right there.
Are willing to come to do testing because they know they're getting a Jolly Rancher.
What do you think maybe is one of the things as a teacher? Do you think that this kind of homeschooling now maybe has brought a little bit more perspective to parents? I know as a millennial growing up, there was kind of this shift culturally, I believe, or at least I could see it more. Maybe I've just matured, but I think there was a bit more of a cultural shift to not holding students as accountable on many things. And I think some of those things are, as are absolutely, we need to work around. We need to make allowance for. But at the same time, on the extreme end of that spectrum, it was a lot of, kind of blaming the students the teachers for a lot of the maybe shortcomings or whatever, however you want to put it, of the students. Do you think that this will bring some honest perspective to maybe some of the more interesting parents out there?
Well, it certainly is a reality check for all parents. Most parents didn't ever plan on being their child's teacher. They expect to be their first teacher in life, but they didn't expect to take on this role. So it has given all teachers a real chuckle seeing all the posts on Facebook of, parents that they're done. They've had one day of homeschooling and they're done. And, they're seeing the reality of trying to get their kids motivated into work.
And that's just one kid, not let alone 30 or 40.
Yeah. But it's also very different. There were many a year that, I had better management in the classroom than I did coming home with you 3 kids. So,
well, and okay, so speaking to that, though, like, we were extraordinary as a challenge bunch. So we had our own host of issues that were obviously, a lot of them were self. At the end of the day, we made choices as your kids. We made choices that we didn't necessarily have the wisdom or the knowledge to know how not to react to situations. And so we would react off of reactions. Talking about me, of course. But I think, just seeing you be able to hold together and looking back in life, and being able to look back in my 20s at my teen years. Oh God, nobody looks back at like junior high and they're like, those are the glory days. Everyone hates junior. Like, if you think junior high was your glory days, there's a whole nother conversation there. But for me, looking back and seeing, and recognizing, just everything that you and Dad put in to, your kids, and to see, where everyone's at now. With Anna, leading a lot of missionary stuff and in a way, she's studying now childhood development, and doing those things. And for me, stepping into leadership roles at the church and, going back to school and all those things. I think it's brought us some perspective as well. And I think that's just part of growing up. But I am excited to see kind of, in a weird way, excited to see how this whole, quarantine virus craziness ends. I'm excited for when it ends, and I'm excited to see it end. If you had one bit of advice or one, actually before that, what do you think would be the best possible way that we as just as society, could support and help our teachers and ultimately the education system so that we can correctly and effectively educate and train our kids for life and for moving forward.
I think a big one that I've really noticed more and more in the last few years is helping our kids be independent. I think parents want to provide so much for their kids that they end up doing a lot for their kids, and just having kids develop that confidence from being able to be independent, make their own lunch, pack their own backpack, and take responsibility for things. And this is a perfect opportunity now during this shelter in place that, the parent is now the homeschool teacher, but the kids still can be the one taking on that responsibility of knowing what they're supposed to be doing, looking it up, asking the questions for the things they don't understand. Yeah. So, that's something that kids can then take into the future. And for my students and for all kids, I just, really hope and pray that they can just still see some positives, and that they remember the positive times from this experience. I think that's a real possibility that, there's a lot of difficult things going on, but they're getting to go to school in their pajamas and they're hanging out with their dog. And
it's like they're in college.
So, it's not what we chose, and I miss them, but I just hope and pray for the kids that they will, take away some positives from this experience, both in how they've had to maybe manage themselves in different ways, but have some memories of more time with family that will be good for their future.
Awesome. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. I'm really looking forward to potentially, possibly, hopefully having a part 2 with you, Mom, here on the podcast, and especially as the quarantine and everything continues on and, this whole situation gets smoothed out. We'd love to have you back on. You obviously have a whole host, 2 lifetimes of me for knowledge and experience. And so I want to hear more about that and be able to share those and share those experiences. With that being said, thank you so much for coming on, Mom.
Thank you.
Of course. And don't forget, if you guys could like and subscribe, big one. Our goal at the end of this 12-month period, which would be about February, is to have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. That would be a huge help for us. You don't need a spam like anything. You don't need we're not going to harass you with updates. You don't even have to turn the notification button on, though that would be awesome as well. But make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next Across the Table. Thank you.